Chapter 1. A few afternoons in June London, 1822. "Marry me, Claire," Viscount Westmorland said to the stunning redhead seated across from him in his mother's grand salon. "I can't go on like this another year. One of those ravenous maidens pinched me this afternoon in Harrison's sitting room." "Shall I pour you a lemonade, my lord?" she asked indulgently. "Marriage, Claire, with children, grand estates, and my eternal gratitude. Doesn't that sound lovely?" "And it would have to be you I marry?" she asked, hazel eyes sparkling with mischief as she extended a hand with the aforementioned lemonade. "What keeps me suffering your awful company?" "Does that mean you no longer wish to marry me?" she laughed. "Did I tell you how Lady Riley lured me to tea with that sumptuous body of hers, then tried to marry me off to her daughter? She's a lovely girl." "It's perverse, Claire. I could be that child's father." "Oh, that's right. You did court her mother when she was a debutante, didn't you?" "Are you deliberately trying to provoke me?" "No, my lord. But after a lifetime of knowing you, I find I no longer have to make an effort. It just sort of happens. I never liked you. And still you would marry me? Taking joy from my humiliation makes you depraved. You see that, don't you? Surely you don't begrudge me my one happiness. I realize something in coming here to see my mother. And what is that, my lord?" "I don't like the company she keeps," he said bitingly. "But I'm not company so much as companion, and you pay my keep, so you could, I suppose, instruct her to have me behave." "You only say that because you know full well she prefers you to me and would have me banished from the premises. I warn you, my dear, if this wonderful news of yours has anything to do with some suitable maiden, I won't be able to bear it," Henry said as he greeted his mother with kind hand and a miserable smile. "I've given up on finding you a bride and have instead found a husband for myself," Blanche St. John said pertly as she brushed past her son to sit beside her companion. "This is new," Henry said to Claire over his mother's head. "Have I your blessing, my angel?" his mother continued in spite of his rude dismissal. "To whom have you decided to marry, my dear?" he asked indulgently, though he did not believe his mother would, at 55, remarry. "Lord Philippe Marcel. We are both widowed now, and I should like to live out the rest of my days in the land of my birth, away from this constant chill here in England." "Et tu, maman?" "This was not done to you, my angel," his mother said defensively. "You're 33, and I've dedicated a decade and a half to finding you a wife to no avail. No more. I will return to France at season's end, and you will wish me well. And what of Claire?" "Claire knows she will always have a place in my home, no matter where. And you, Claire, you are willing to abandon England for my mother's whims. Your mother has been nothing but kind to me, and if it is her wish to return to the land of her birth, I will, if she requires it, attend her there." "Who else knows of this?" Henry demanded. "If you're asking whether or not your siblings know," his mother said patiently, "then yes, I've told them." "I see." "Don't sulk, Henry," his mother scolded. "It reduces you to a child." "Lest you forget, I'm your child. You, my lord, are also a peer of this realm, head of your brood, and well past the hour where I'm required to suckle you at my bosom," his mother shot back. "What a thing to say to me," Henry said with injury. "You are a good man, my son, and you have seen us all well since your dear papa's death, but it is time you saw to yourself." "Meaning what exactly?" "You use our care as a crutch," his mother said plainly. "Your father was a lovely man, even if a little rotten with the practical. I see that, and understand how difficult it has been for you to care for us. But you are now as wealthy as Midas. You did your duty and saw your siblings happily settled. For that reason I have not, until now, pushed. But I must insist. Have I been a terrible burden to you, maman?" "No, child," his mother said with a melancholy smile. "But I worry we've hindered your pursuit of happiness with our unyielding demands and near-constant crisis." You mustn't feel it is so. And still, I do. You would pacify me now that I'm attempting to see you well? I'm well when you are happy, maman, he assured her, his voice warm but his tone firm, and she knew there was nothing else for it. Will you come with me to Evelyn's? I'm not much for my sister and her constant offer of cheer just now, thank you. Ah, 'tis a pity, for Philippa will be there, and I so want the two of you to be better acquainted. Don't you worry, my dear. I shall make it my sole duty in the coming weeks to make myself known to your intended, he vowed. Now, Henry, you must not terrify Philippe with your inquisition. I want you two to get on. And we will, the instant that I've instilled unholy fear in him, Henry said with a charming smile. See me to my carriage, she said with extended hand. And Claire, my dear, see to it that he eats something before he leaves. Yes, my lady. The instant they cleared the salon, his mother said, There is a matter I need for you to see to. You need but ask. What do you feel for Claire, Henry? She and I are friends, mother. But then, you know that. So, I suppose that isn't what you're asking. You do not love her. You ask as if you believe I do, he said irritably. I presume nothing, but I see the way she is careful not to look at you, and I'm a woman, so I understand what that means, his mother sighed. That, and I feel responsible for allowing it to go on so long. What do you want me to do, maman? Forgive Viola and embrace the possibility of happiness with Claire. I've long made my peace with Viola and her betrayal. Westmorland, it does not serve you to hold tight to injury when so much awaits you on the other side. My dear, Henry said with measure, and his mother adjusted her approach. Then release Claire. She is nearly 30 and has made no attempt to marry in spite of my encouragement and offered assistance. And you feel this is due to her friendship with me? You doubt it? His mother asked with a challenge in her voice. I never gave it much thought. Don't you think it's time you did? There was nothing else for it, and suddenly his head hurt, like the very devil. He watched his mother pull away in her carriage and lamented having answered her summons. Chapter 2. Henry took a moment there on the front steps to contemplate all he felt for Claire. He knew it was love, and that it had been so almost from the very beginning. That truth terrified him. She had the power to devastate his life, and after the hell he had endured with Viola, he did not know if he could survive losing Claire. She and the friendship they shared was the most precious thing in his life. Now that his mother was leaving, he was going to need her more than ever. His siblings and friends had all long since settled into marriage. He would be alone if she went with his mother to France, but he did not know how he could possibly persuade her to stay without some kind of declaration. Still without resolve, Henry returned to the blue salon, where Claire sat patiently with the newly arrived tea service, and took the chair across from hers. Shall I pour you a cup of tea or fix you a brandy? She asked sympathetically. He held her gaze for a moment without bothering to answer, his expression one she had never seen before, serious and uncertain. Then he asked, Claire, have you ever given marriage any real thought? Of course I have, she said, looking at him now in earnest. What woman hasn't? Then why haven't you married? You know why. No, I can't honestly say that I do. You're beautiful, Claire. In fact, I can truthfully say I've known only a handful of women whose beauty compares to yours. And though modest, your family is respected. Not modest, my lord, but paupers. Hence my vocation as lady's companion, she said with knitted brows. She could not tell what he was getting at, and she didn't like it one bit. She was accustomed to knowing precisely what he was thinking, and this new interest in her personal life unnerved her. Has knowing me stopped you from marrying, Claire? Here now. What am I to you, Claire? I beg your pardon, my lord? It's been almost a full decade since you and I first met, yet you've never once used my given name. Why is that? You're my employer. We are friends. Hardly that. You don't count me as a friend, Claire? He asked with open affront. Is friendship the only cause for this inquiry? She asked suspiciously. I'll start there. You either tell me what this is about this instant, or you leave. It has to do with you being in love with me. You needn't deny it any longer. Now that it's been brought to my attention, I've come to offer you my hand in earnest. Good Lord. Henry will do, he said with an easy smile. No, my lord. It most certainly will not, said a near-hysterical Claire. Who's responsible for this? Who would be callous enough to convince you of such a thing? Do you deny it? What do you really want? She asked with open suspicion. You ask me that after a lifetime of friendship. The fact that you are indignant does not help me, for even the guilty are able to express righteousness, and I've been your confessor long enough to know what you're capable of. Then you also know that if all I wanted was you in my bed, it would not be a hardship for me. I see the way you look at me. That was it. He had really done it this time. Claire was beyond irritated. She was furious. If you have mistakenly interpreted my pitied glances for an aged Lothario as anything but that, well, it explains quite a lot. She was lying, of course. There was no denying that he had mastered the art of the male allure. He could, if he chose, easily seduce her out of her good sense, her clothes, or her inhibitions. He was the quintessential romantic English lord, tall, fair, lean, brilliantly proportioned, with the sort of ratios that had undoubtedly inspired Michelangelo to put chisel to marble. Beautiful, effortless, dangerous. He was sex itself, and well, she knew it. What the devil is that to mean? That you have an inflated sense of self, she said sharply, though her voice trembled. From anyone else that might have been true, Henry volleyed. It's strange how I'm honest in all things in my life, except with you. You with whom I hold my breath, trying always to be more than I am, younger, faster, smarter. All for you, who expect nothing from me. Are you telling me that our entire friendship has been nothing but a lie? No. What I'm saying is that I always make an attempt to present to you my best self, but in the end I always fall short, and through no fault of my own, I end up presenting to you my honest self. Though why I should feel the need to defend myself to you, who doesn't even consider me a friend. We are friends, she conceded. Claire wanted this over. She needed to find her bearings before either of them said something they couldn't recover from. But Henry meant to have his say. And still you are an enigma to me. Unseen, but for your beauty. I know nothing of you. No vulnerability, no flaw, nothing beyond your pretty exterior. You say that as if you hold me responsible. Oh, but I do. You are too content to be looked upon because you know most will never see beyond your facade, and you use it as armor to keep everyone at bay. Why don't you simply tell me what's caused this sudden interest in me and my life? Mother. This is your mother's doing. She worries that your deliberate restraint in my presence is a sign of your deep tendrer. I'll admit to your having a degree of allure, but I would not go so far as to say it has altered my life. He didn't relent. Now, we both know that's not the truth, and I feel it's worth discussing. How dare he? First, he had held her suspended for all those years, and now he meant to have her laid bare and vulnerable for his ego. She would not have it. There was never anything between us but a fleeting consideration, and not even that if the truth is to be told. I was never more to you than an awed girl with unspoiled adoration, but I've long outgrown my fascination with the idea of you as romantic hero. The gloves were off now. Henry had had enough. She was being unreasonable, and he meant for her to see it. I was always so very careful with you, you know, Henry said sincerely. Ever mindful not to cross the lines of decency. Never touched you the way I wanted. I let you provoke want in me time and again. But then, it's never been a hardship. I've always delighted in the thrill and the chase. None of this matters anyway. I hadn't planned to tell you quite like this. But I've decided to marry, Claire said over her strained emotions and his open stare. Is that right? Yes. My cousin Rochelle's widower, she offered steadily. Claire was bothered by his calm, but she refused to let him see how much he affected her. After all, she had just put him behind her and would not allow him to upset her newfound equilibrium. Tell me, Claire, how long dead will I be when this wedding takes place? You are being unreasonable. Besides, I owe you no explanation. And since that is the case, I shall take my leave, she said, rising. I'll have my say, sweetheart. So, what is there for you to say now that I've found an end without you? Does that mean you no longer desire me, chérie? What does it matter now that I'm no longer available to you? She asked angrily. I waited a whole lifetime for you to acknowledge what lay between us, and had your mother not insisted, heaven only knows what would have become of me. No more. I've found a gentleman who is sensible and reliable. And it's your intent to build a life with this man based on qualifications one seeks in a steward. Better a gentleman with the resume of a steward than one with the credentials of a malcontent hellrake. Why are you trying to provoke me when all I seek is your comfort? He asked with infuriating calm, while she burned with barely contained anger. He liked that he was able to incite her out of her usual composure, and took the opportunity to unsettle her further with a slow, easy smile. Poor Claire. She had never been able to tolerate the full effect of Henry's lazy, self-assured smile, and her traitorous body glowed with want. I'd like you to leave this instant, she said with dignity. Say it so I believe you mean it, he said with smug satisfaction. And I'll not only leave, I won't return unless invited. Why are you doing this to me now that I've found peace? Because what lies between us does not belong to you alone, and I no longer wish to deny the attraction I feel for you. You're perverse. Now, what kind of sense would that make? Why would I initiate a wager in a field where I have so little knowledge? Surely you know I'd be nothing but eager to teach you all I know on the matter. Yes, all right then. I beg your pardon? I'm accepting your offer. Yes, I see that, but why now, after all this time? It will serve as a means to an end. Yes? He prompted. It will cure you of me, and affirm for me my belief that my choice of husband is the most sensible. What the devil did you just say? This is not meant to hurt you, you understand? It's only that I've known you long enough to understand that you've never been able to sustain your interest in any lady once you've had full physical knowledge of her. In fact, I think it's the only thing that's kept you interested in maintaining our association. Our friendship. We were never friends. You believe this to be true and still continue to involve yourself with me? I never said I was without fault. I know my judgment where you are concerned is not to be recommended, and it's for that reason I've decided to go this course. Oh, I see. Well, I wish you a good afternoon, Miss Maxwell, he said with a front before rising to take his leave. And to you, my lord, she returned with a triumphant smile. Then something changed in his eyes, and she knew, in that instant before he spoke, that she had given him the advantage by showing her hand too soon. He revelled in her loss, walking past her toward the door as though willing to concede. Then he stopped suddenly behind her. Tell me, Claire, have you already accepted this widower's offer? I will the instant his period of mourning is over and he sets forth his formal offer. Interesting, he murmured, bending to whisper in her ear, for I wouldn't want you to have to break your word once you finally accept that no one but me will do. Now, he paused long enough for her to feel the weight of his words, his breath hot on her ear, pulling at her core. Then, deliberate as sin, he brushed his lips over the eager flush of her earlobe and murmured, I'll see to it that we are not disturbed. Chapter 3. He was watching her, his eyes fixed on her straight, resolute back, and in that instant he was transported to their first meeting in that very room. The room had changed, as had they both. It had once been French in every sense, gilded mouldings, pale blue damask walls, the soft luxury his mother favoured. Now it bore the serene elegance of chinoiserie, blue and white, dignified and calm. He had still been reeling then, from his father's death, from Viola's betrayal, when he stumbled upon her waiting for his mother. She had been Botticelli's Venus incarnate, from her flaming curls to her determined chin, and he had been utterly undone. It had been the first time since Viola that his heart had leapt at the sight of a woman, and the sensation had filled him with dread. For he had loved Viola all his life, and she had abandoned him when he needed her most. This smiling goddess with wise eyes and unruly hair terrified him far more. She had offered self-deprecation in answer to his open, lustful stare, and from that moment they had been easy together. "Is it not outrageous?" she had said, gesturing to her riotous copper curls. "And because of it, I'm not permitted to walk the fields during the fox hunt, for fear I'll be mistaken for a flame and shot." "You are the young woman who is to help my mother introduce my sisters to society?" he'd asked. "I am," she had said, her chin high. "And aside from my vulgar hair, I am entirely without impropriety." He had found that a pity, though he liked her immediately. She was intelligent, witty, alluring, and, quite simply, a joy to be near. His entire family had fallen in love with her. His brother had proposed to her, as had two of his friends. But it was he who had her heart. He saw that now in the quiet that hung between them, and the realization humbled him. She had chosen him, and she had waited, yet she would wait no more. That much he could see in her stance, and the knowledge troubled him, for he did not know whether he could love her as she deserved. The silence lingered, and she grew impatient. Then her voice, soft but steady, broke through. "My lord." "Henry," he corrected from behind her. "If this is to be all there is between us, it must be Henry." "I cannot," she whispered. "I don't want to." "You will," he promised gently. "I swear it." "Couldn't you simply let me be happy?" she implored, still not turning. "And it would make you happy to never know my touch." "Better to never know your touch than to miss it for the rest of my days." "Then marry me," Henry said suddenly, stepping to her side. "I'd marry you in an instant if I felt it were truly the best thing, but I've long accepted the impossibility of it. I could be happy with Lord Addison and his children." "You're wrong. It would only be a matter of time before you realized it." "I'll be someplace where I don't hold my breath, waiting for you to enter the room only to tell me you've fallen in love with some more suitable miss," she said bitterly. Henry reached to take her arm, but she recoiled, snapping, "Don't touch me. You're always touching me." "I only touch at your encouragement." "You say that to me now?" "We ought at least to be truthful," he countered. "You provoke my touch with your nearness and your eyes." "Then I would say you are as wicked as I suspected." "That only makes us two of a kind, darling. I'm nothing but the assent to your lure, and if you marry this man, it will only be time before we are back to afternoons spent too close. Then tell me, how long before restraint gives way?" "My word has value, my lord. Unlike those reckless wives who break their vows to entertain your whims, I will be steadfast and true." "You say that here, locked in with me on a solitary afternoon?" "I say it anywhere. I no longer wish to dream of your touch or hope for your love. I've had my fill of holding my heart until you reappear, only to hold me hostage with your smiles. I can stand it no more." "Claire, that's not fair. You've sentenced me without a trial. And what testimony would you present if given the opportunity? Do you love me?" "I'm yours. I can't be without you. Let that be enough for now." His hands rose to her face as he lowered his head and brushed his lips over hers. She kissed him back, instinctively, desperately. The kiss was a homecoming, warm, fierce, filled with the years of longing between them. It was comfort and fire all at once, lips clinging greedily, tongue seeking and retreating in breathless rhythm. Each of them, in that moment, was the other's refuge. When finally they parted, trembling, his forehead rested against hers and he whispered, "Let me show you how much." Her eyes fluttered closed. "Henry." He kissed her again, softer this time, and the rest came as though inevitable. Her gown loosening under his skilled hands, her breath catching as his lips traced reverent paths across her skin. The air was thick with devotion and want, and when he drew her near again, she surrendered completely. They did not speak again for a long time. Only the sound of their hearts filled the room, the rhythm of long-delayed unity, of love claimed at last. When it was over, Claire lay quiet beneath the sweep of sunlight, her hair a fiery halo on the pale sofa. Henry watched her, wonder and remorse mingling in his gaze. "You mean to get your way, despite my reservations, don't you?" she whispered. "That's not fair, Claire. Won't you leave me be? I have nothing else to give, and I find that I no longer have use for what it is you have to offer." "And this Addison, he loves you?" "No, but I don't require love from him, nor could he break my heart. He offers me purpose and the possibility of peace." "You're a coward." "And you are a heartless, pleasure-seeking hedonist. We all have our cross to bear." "Better weak in restraint than pious in cowardice," Henry shot back. "Imagine believing yourself in love with me, then fleeing to marry what's safe because loving me has proven difficult. I all but declared myself to you earlier this season, turning up at your home in the middle of the afternoon. I could have been ruined for it, and you treated me as an errand girl, sending me off to buy your mother's birthday gift while you cavorted with Sir Crane's widow." "I'm sorry, Claire," he said at last, in earnest. "I see that, but it changes nothing. I love you. You do not love me, and I will marry elsewhere. Outside of my family, there is no one I care for more than you. Give me time to figure it out. I wish I could, for both our sakes, but I simply cannot. I couldn't bear to wait, only to have you confirm what I've long accepted." "I care deeply for you," he vowed quietly. She swallowed against the tears rising in her throat. She loved him, and yet she could stand his indifference no longer. Still, what else could she do but protect what remained of her heart? Her resolve crystallized. She would give in to the want that bound them, and, once spent, carry on with her heartbreak into the sensible life awaiting her with Lord Addison. Chapter 4. It rained that night, a soft, steady drizzle that painted the London streets in silver. Claire sat awake long after the lamps had been extinguished, her shawl drawn tightly around her shoulders. The house was quiet. Even Lady Westmorland had gone to bed hours earlier. Still, sleep would not come. Her thoughts were of Henry, his mouth, his hands, the low rumble of his voice as he had whispered her name. The memory of their afternoon together still burned on her skin, both comfort and torment. It had been madness, she told herself, and yet she could not bring herself to regret it. The morning after, she had received a letter from Lord Addison. Courteous, measured, and dull. He wrote that his mourning was drawing to a close, and that he wished to discuss the possibility of marriage. Claire had folded the letter neatly and placed it on her writing desk, untouched since. Henry had not called since that afternoon, and she did not expect he would. Theirs had been an inevitability, and now that it had happened, he would retreat behind his pride and his guilt. Men like Henry always did. But she had misjudged him. For as she sat staring into the fire, she heard the soft knock of knuckles against the drawing-room door. Her heart stilled. No one knocked so late unless there was trouble, or unless it was him. "Come in," she said barely above a whisper. He entered without ceremony, the faintest trace of rain clinging to his coat and hair. His eyes found hers immediately, weary but certain. "I couldn't sleep," he said simply. "Then you should not have come." "I know." She rose from her seat and crossed the room to stand near the hearth, keeping the sofa and propriety between them. This is foolish, Henry. You should not say such things to me. And yet I will. I have never been a man of faith, Claire. But you are the one thing that has ever made me believe in something beyond myself. Henry. He closed the space between them then, taking her hand. The warmth of his palm against her trembling fingers undid her resolve. Say you'll come away with me, he murmured. To the country, to anywhere that isn't this endless parade of drawing rooms and expectations. Just a week. I want to know what it is to have you without the world intruding. And after? After, I'll ask you to marry me properly. And this time, I'll not take your refusal as gospel. You're jesting. I'm not, he said, earnest and quiet. I've loved you longer than I've admitted to myself. Perhaps I was afraid. Perhaps I still am. But I'll not lose you to a man who will never know the sound of your laughter in the morning. She tried to look away, but his gaze held her fast. If I go with you, Henry, it will not be for a week. Then stay forever, he said softly. The fire cracked, sending a shower of sparks into the air between them. He reached for her then, and this time she did not resist. His mouth found hers with desperate hunger, and all the years of hesitation melted away. She clung to him as if he were her salvation, her undoing, her very breath. When they finally parted, breathless and trembling, she rested her head against his chest. We cannot continue like this, she whispered. Then marry me and we needn't. Her laugh was broken, half a sob. You'd make me ruin myself and then make an honest woman of me? I'd make you mine, he said, pressing his lips to her hair. She closed her eyes, her heart torn between reason and want. You'd better mean it, my lord. I do, he said, and this time she believed him. Chapter 5. The following morning dawned bright and unseasonably warm, as though the heavens themselves wished to bless what had transpired in that quiet drawing-room. Henry did not sleep. He rose with the dawn, restless and certain. For the first time in his life, his course was clear. He meant to marry her, before gossip, before doubt, before even she could change her mind. Good morning, my lord, she said without turning. Henry, he corrected again, softly. She smiled faintly. I remembered. He stepped beside her, close enough that their sleeves brushed. Say it again. Good morning, Henry. He closed his eyes briefly, as if savouring a prayer. That will never grow old. They stood in companionable silence for a time, the hum of waking birds filling the stillness between them. Then, unable to contain himself, he said simply, I meant what I said last night. About what? About marrying you. About making you my wife. She turned to him then, her expression gentle but wary. You were very sure of yourself last night. Morning has a way of undoing certainty. Not this morning. Henry, you know what such a declaration would mean. For you. For me. Yes, it would mean the rest of my life, he said firmly. She looked away, troubled. You don't know what you're asking. He reached for her hands and folded them in his. I know exactly what I'm asking. I've lived without you long enough to know that I will not do so again. Her voice softened. And yet you will, once you've considered the consequences. What consequence could outweigh this? He asked, touching her cheek. Claire's breath caught. The whispers, the scandal. You are a viscount. I am nothing. Marrying me would bring every gossip in Mayfair to your door. Let them come, she gave a rueful laugh. You speak like a man who's never been the subject of true malice. I have, he said quietly, and still I stand here. There was conviction in his eyes that frightened her more than any threat could. He would not be turned from this course, and she, foolish woman, found herself wanting to believe him. Henry, she whispered, if you mean to do this, you must speak with your mother first. I intend to, but I would rather she hear it from me when you are beside me. Beside you? He nodded. As the woman I love, as my future wife. Her composure wavered. You'll have me ruined before noon? Then I must be quick about it, he said with a smile that melted all her resistance. She shook her head but could not help returning his grin. You are impossible. So you've told me. Repeatedly. This kiss was not the desperate surrender of the night before, but a promise, steady, sure, and filled with all that might yet come. When he drew back, his thumb brushed the corner of her mouth, reverent and sure. I love you, Claire, he said. She closed her eyes, a tear slipping free. I've waited so long to hear it. Then you'll never go another day without it. Henry, she whispered, if you mean to keep me, you must make it soon. I'll not survive another season of uncertainty. He took her hand and pressed it to his chest. Then let us end the uncertainty. Today. Chapter 6. By noon that same day, Henry had made up his mind. There would be no hesitation, no delay. He had lived long enough in half measures. He would not lose Claire to fear or decorum. Lady Westmorland was in her morning room when he found her, seated near the window with a cup of tea and a letter from his younger sister open on her lap. The gentle rustle of the paper ceased the moment she looked up and saw him. Henry, she said warmly, you're out early. I hadn't expected to see you before luncheon. I needed to speak with you, Mother, he said, drawing a steady breath. She regarded him with mild curiosity, though something in his tone made her straighten. You sound very grave. Sit down, my dear. Has something happened? In a manner of speaking, yes, he said, pacing instead of sitting. I've made a decision regarding my future. Lady Westmorland's brow lifted, but she said nothing. Henry rarely made pronouncements of any kind without first exhausting his mother's counsel, and the sudden confidence in his voice struck her as both thrilling and ominous. I mean to marry, he said simply. The faintest smile touched her lips. At last. And may I ask whom you've chosen? He met her gaze squarely. Claire Maxwell. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the soft tick of the clock on the mantel. Then, with surprising calm, Lady Westmorland set her teacup aside. I wondered if it might be her, she said at last. You have looked at no one else for years. You are not displeased? I do, though I would be a poor mother indeed if I did not warn you what others will say. I know what they will say, he replied, that she is beneath me, that she lacks a fortune, a title, the proper name, but she is the only one who has ever truly known me. Lady Westmorland nodded slowly. Then it is settled. When will you tell her? I already have. A soft laugh escaped her. Of course you have. Then all that remains is to make it official. Word of their engagement spread through Mayfair with the efficiency of wildfire. By the time invitations to the Westmorland ball were delivered that evening, the ton was already in uproar. Marrying his mother's companion? Impossible, cried Lady Sandhurst, fanning herself with violent vigour. They say she refused him twice before accepting, whispered another. I heard it was thrice, came the smug reply, and that he proposed in the garden, no less, with the servants watching from the terrace. Within 48 hours, the gossip had reached every drawing-room from Grosvenor Square to Pall Mall. Henry bore it with quiet amusement. Claire, however, found the scrutiny less easily dismissed. She had not been raised to bear such public inspection. She felt it in every lifted eyebrow, every strained smile, every too-sweet compliment laced with condescension. You mustn't let them unsettle you, Lady Westmorland told her gently as they prepared for the ball that would mark the official announcement. They will talk for a time, and then they will find some new scandal to occupy them. I wish I shared your certainty, Claire confessed, fastening her pearls with trembling fingers. It feels as though the entire city watches to see whether I stumble. Then let them watch. And let them see a woman who does not bow to their cruelty, Lady Westmorland said with quiet pride. You will be mistress of this house soon enough, my dear. They may whisper, but they will have to curtsy. Claire smiled faintly at that. You are very kind to me. I am very fond of you, Lady Westmorland corrected. You have brought laughter back into this house, and you have given my son what I feared he would never find again. And what is that? Peace, she said simply. That evening, when Henry entered the ballroom and saw Claire standing at the top of the grand staircase, all thoughts of gossip and propriety vanished. She wore pale blue silk that shimmered under the chandeliers, her copper hair coiled elegantly at her neck. The room stilled at her entrance. Even the most venomous of his mother's acquaintances could find no fault with her grace. He went to her without hesitation, took her hand, and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Mrs. Maxwell, he said softly, may I have this dance? She met his gaze, her eyes bright with emotion. You may, my lord. As they moved together across the polished floor, the orchestra swelled and murmurs rippled through the crowd. But Henry heard none of it. The only sound that mattered was her laughter. The only face that mattered was hers. Chapter 7. The morning after the ball dawned soft and golden, the world bathed in that tranquil hush that only follows a night of great joy. Claire awoke to the faint sound of birds in the garden and the murmur of distant voices downstairs. For a moment she lay still, half dreaming, unwilling to let go of the memory of the night before. The music, the candlelight, Henry's steady hand guiding her across the floor, his voice when he introduced her, without hesitation, as his future wife. She smiled into her pillow. Her life had changed overnight. Where once there had been uncertainty, now there was purpose. Where there had been restraint, now there was peace. A gentle knock at the door stirred her from her reverie. Come in, she called, sitting up as Lady Westmorland entered, still radiant from the previous evening, though the hour was early. Good morning, my dear, she said kindly. You slept, I hope? I did, though I half wondered if it was all a dream. Lady Westmorland's smile warmed. If it was, it is one we shall both share. The ton will be talking for months, but I dare say they will come round in the end. I never cared much for their opinion, Claire said, though she flushed all the same. Still, it feels strange to wake and know I am spoken of in every drawing-room in London. Then you must grow accustomed to it, Lady Westmorland replied gently. For you are to be the Viscountess Westmorland, and that, my dear, will always command attention. Claire rose then, and the two women went to the window where the early sun glowed over the gardens. He means to marry me within the month, she said softly. Lady Westmorland nodded. He told me as much. I have seldom seen him so resolved. He has waited a long time to be sure, Claire murmured. And you? Claire's eyes softened, her voice a whisper. I was sure from the first. Later that morning, Henry arrived at the breakfast room with a bouquet of pale wildflowers gathered from the garden. He looked younger somehow, the stern lines of duty and self-reproach eased from his features. Good morning, my love, he said, and the words, so simple, so utterly tender, caught her breath. Good morning, Henry, she replied, rising to meet him. He kissed her hand with the same reverence he had shown that first night. I've just seen the morning papers. It's official. Every column in London knows I am to be the happiest man alive. Perhaps, he said, drawing her close, but I'd rather be mad with you than sane without you. She looked up at him then, her eyes bright with unshed tears. It feels unreal. After so many years, after everything we've been through, this quiet is almost too much to bear. Then let us fill the quiet, he murmured, brushing a kiss to her temple. Let us make plans, choose your flowers, your gown, torment the vicar with endless indecision. It shall be a small wedding, just as you wished. Devon, the church by the orchard, a handful of friends and family. No spectacle, no scandal, only peace. "And love," she whispered. "And love," he agreed. "Always love." The days that followed were a golden dream. There were fittings and letters, carriage rides in Hyde Park where the stairs no longer wounded her, and long stolen afternoons in the blue salon where they planned a life that seemed finally within reach. He teased her gently about her meticulous notes, pages of lists in her small, graceful hand. And she teased him about his impatience, the way he would reach for her wrist whenever she passed, unable to keep from touching her. By the third week, even London had begun to soften. Invitations now addressed her as Miss Maxwell, fiancée to Viscount Westmorland. The tide of gossip had turned to fascination, if not admiration, at the notion that love, rather than convenience, had triumphed at last. On the morning before they were to leave for Devon, Henry found Claire alone in the blue salon, the same room where their story had begun. He paused in the doorway, watching her as the sunlight fell across her face, catching the copper in her hair. "You were right," he said quietly. She turned, smiling. "About what?" "About friendship. It was the foundation of everything." She crossed to him then, her expression soft with memory. "And yet it wasn't friendship that kept you coming back." "No," he said, drawing her into his arms. "It was you. Always you." The clock chimed, and she laid her head against his chest, listening to the familiar rhythm of his heart. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "Tomorrow," he echoed, and kissed her hair. Epilogue. Now the Westmorland estate was a home filled with laughter and light. The servants adored their mistress, the tenants prospered under her care, and Henry's household, once cold and silent, had found its heart again. It was late afternoon when Henry entered the blue salon, his favourite room, now newly refitted in French blue and gold, the sunlight flooding through tall windows to dance across the polished floor. There she was. Claire stood near the window, the light spilling over her hair so that it shimmered like molten copper. Her gown was simple and elegant, her figure unchanged, save for the soft maturity that time and contentment had brought. He paused in the doorway for a long moment, struck by the same reverence that had seized him the first day he met her. "I kissed you here," he said quietly, his voice filled with memory. "The very first day we met." She turned to him, smiling. "I remember. You were insufferably sure of yourself." "And you were already the end of me," he said, crossing the room. "Do you know, I asked you to marry me here at least a dozen times?" "At least," she said, laughing softly, "and you did so with all the conviction of a man certain of his doom." "Why didn't you ever say yes?" She tilted her head, her smile tender. "Because you needed time to grow into the man you were meant to be. Besides, if I had told you sooner, we might never have become the friends we were when we married." He smiled, cupping her face in his hand. "It took me nearly a decade." "And you were well worth the wait, my love." He bent to kiss her then, softly at first, then with that same unguarded affection that had carried them through the years, the kind of kiss that belonged to no one else but them. When he drew back, he rested his forehead against hers. "Do you ever regret it? The scandal, the whispers, the years of talk?" She laughed gently. "Regret you? Never. Though I confess I do sometimes wish I had known sooner how easily happiness might be found if one is brave enough to take it." He smiled against her hair. "You were always the brave one." "And you," she teased, "the stubborn one." "Then together," he said softly, "we are perfect." The clock chimed, and through the open windows came the distant sound of their children's laughter, two small voices tumbling across the gardens. Claire turned toward the sound, her eyes alight with love. "They have your mischief. They have your heart," he murmured. She looked up at him then, the sunlight glancing off her lashes. "And what do you have, my lord?" he smiled. Everything I ever wanted. And there, in the blue salon where their story had begun, the Viscount and his lady stood together in the golden light of their forever.